evening, everyone.
No.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to see everybody's face following the holidays. If you can just give a couple more minutes for everybody to join the meeting, we'll get rolling.
Sounds good. Everybody have a good holiday.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes, great.
If my face takes up more of the screen, it's because I ate way too much.
It's
I'm gonna
hard
have to
not
use that. I'm gonna have to use that one, Marshall. That was a good one.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Ready for the next holiday.
Yes, we are.
Yes, I can finally say I am done with Christmas shopping.
As they say, 'tis the season to be jolly. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Or to be broke. All right, Marshall, are you able to see whether we have full attendance at this point or close to?
I'm looking. It looks like we are. Everybody is in from a couple of folks from the waiting room. So let's see here. Actually, a couple more. One more second.
Yeah, I'll hang tight.
One more second here. Okay. Right now, there's no one else waiting to join.
Okay, that sounds good. Since it's 5, if my clock on my computer is correct, I show 5:59, so I'll give it right until 6 o'clock and we can roll. Okay, ladies and gents, it is 6 p.m. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'd like to start by thanking all of the committee members as well as those in the audience, as well as the development team for joining this evening. And I'd also like to thank all of you who took the time to join for the site visit a couple of weeks ago. I think that was a really good overview for all of us. For tonight's meeting, we have a couple of presenters slated to provide information to the committee. So again, I'll ask that you hold your questions until the end of each presentation, at which time I will open the floor for questions. Just as a quick reminder, each committee member shall have an opportunity to speak once before any committee member should take the floor for a second time on a particular matter. With that, though, let's go ahead and move forward. I will ask Madam Secretary if she can go ahead and conduct tonight's roll call.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so I'll walk through this and everybody just say if you're here. So Allison Clark,
Here.
Nicole Morato,
Here.
Amy Taylor,
Here.
Patricia Culp,
Here.
Sharon Williams,
Here.
Sean Billingsley, okay, Sean not joining today.
No, he's at the board meeting with our HOA. Our community
Okay,
meeting.
cool.
Yep.
How about Tori Tucker? Not here, Tori Tucker.
I don't see him in.
Okay. LaShawn Atwaters.
I don't see her in yet either.
Okay. Jerry Basin. Okay. Myself.
Here he
Heather
is
Barnes.
on. Here he is on. Looks like
Here.
he's on mute.
Jared
There,
Basin is here.
still on mute.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Great. Good to see you, Jerry. Ann Phillips.
Here.
You, Shirley Nichols. Okay, Ophelia Lee. Here. Jacqueline Rainey. Is Jacqueline here?
Jacqueline is in. Jacqueline, we can't hear you. Looks like you're on mute still.
George Graves.
Okay, maybe Jacqueline will get her audio figured out. We'll come back to you. Deputy Chief Darren Shearbaum.
Here.
First Deputy Chief James McElmore. Is James here?
I don't see him.
Okay. Joyce Shepard.
I don't see Joyce Shepherd in either.
Okay. Thanks. Justin Johnson.
No Justin.
And Hollis Turner. Last one.
I don't see Hollis either.
Okie dokie. Was there anybody that I did not mention?
I'm sorry, I'm Jackie. I had to go in and out. I was having some trouble, so I missed the last couple of segments.
Okay.
So
no
I don't
worries.
know what you're asking. Or were you asking something?
We were just doing roll call.
Hmm?
We were doing roll call.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
And Lily, we also did just get in Holly as well. Hollis Turner.
Hello.
Okay. Great. Okay.
And are we going to approve the minutes from the last meeting or no?
We will in just a moment, Sharon. With that,
I'm sorry.
Madam Secretary, have we met quorum for tonight's meeting? I would.
Sorry, I
wasn't
have to
counting, but I
total it
imagine
up.
we have at least 9 on board, so I'm pretty sure we're there.
9. Okay. 1 second. I was in the wrong part of the spreadsheet. Yeah. We have 13.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for conducting roll call.
Thank you for your patience.
With that, copies of the minutes were distributed for everyone's review. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from any members of the committee? Okay, well, if not, the minutes stand approved as read rather than us moving through yet another roll call to make life a little easier on everybody. Let's move forward with our agenda for this evening, which was also distributed ahead of the meeting. Again, I will ask if there are any objections to the agenda before moving that it be adopted. Okay, with no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is hereby adopted. With that, I know you guys are getting tired of hearing from me in just a moment, but before we move into tonight's presentations, I just want to address a couple of items from 2 emails that I did receive ahead of tonight's meeting. Ms. Nicole Morato provided the chair with a very thorough list of items that require some clarification and that frankly are just open items before the committee. I'm going to do my best to address as many of those items as possible tonight, but some of these items will be addressed in our upcoming meetings. So just to kind of visit some of what was brought before us, in the list of open items, we start with the timeline and when the APF or the development team is proposing to revisit the clearing. As I understand it now, the timeline remains as proposed. Nothing has changed up until this point. Mr. Freeman, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Okay,
perfect. As far as the next item, it is burning invasive undergrowth versus a chemical weed killer. This is something that has been noted for committee input, and the APF can subsequently follow up once committee perspective is determined. I think that this is going to involve a little bit of investigation on the either development teams or the APF's part. So please know that this item is noted and should come up in our future meetings. One of the next items is plans for the landfill and a time frame for development moratorium. The landfill property is City of Atlanta property. And so the use, development, et cetera, would be determined by the City of Atlanta. So that's where that question would have to be directed. Infrastructure collaboration with DeKalb County, definitely a topic that we will have to address. It is being planned for a later agenda, and that way the appropriate parties from the county can also be a party to those communications, since they will be the ones making much of the determinations there. The next item listed is protests during development and what the plans are surrounding that. I'm not really sure that this is an appropriate area for the committee to cover, or that there would be any desire to share publicly a security plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who would be in charge of that, but my understanding at this point is not really something that we would be jumping into.
Yeah, I'd say on the protest during development, Chief Sherbaum would be the appropriate person to respond to that item.
Good evening, everyone. Should any protest development arise, we will work closely with the DeKalb County Police Department. They are the entity that has primary jurisdiction in that area. And so we have worked with them in the past protecting First Amendment actions, and we will continue to do so if it arose here.
Good deal. Thank you very much for that feedback. The next item is a follow-up on the training programs, violence reduction, de-escalation, best practices in training. The challenge here is that this is, again, something that falls outside of the scope of this committee, at least our advisory responsibilities. The standards of training are determined by post and the training policies of each individual agency that would be making use of the facility. So I do know that Deputy Chief Sherbaum made a generous offer to allow committee members to learn a bit more via the Citizens Academy. And I think that would probably be our best opportunity to learn a little bit more about those best practices and the training. But we will have no advisory responsibility in determining what that training looks like. Public access or training at the firing range. If I understand this correctly, I think this is indicating a potential for public use of the firing range. And if that is the ask here, then that question would certainly be something to be proposed or posed to the City of Atlanta. The mayor or the county attorney would have to evaluate the possibility of that or any associated liabilities. So definitely the direction for that question would be the City of Atlanta. The existing buildings that are not being developed and how they are going to be preserved, that again will include some, or actually I guess the question here is whether DeKalb County will have any involvement. I think that is definitely something to be brought up during a meeting when we have DeKalb County on the line as well. I do not know whether or not tonight's presentation includes any information on the existing buildings that are not being developed, but if not, it will certainly come into play in a subsequent meeting. Hours of operation for the park, as well as path access. Assuming we stay consistent with the rules that govern DeKalb parks, we would, or parks would have access starting at 7 a.m. and closing at sunset. However, if there are areas where lighting is provided, operation can continue up until 11 p.m. And so that would be something that can be determined as, you know, we move through this process and see what the build out actually looks like and whether or not there's areas that will be lighted later and available for use, but otherwise I would assume the 7 a.m. to sunset on that. What is happening to the library columns, old tank and older existing buildings on the side of the development? I think this is a great question for the development team. I'm not sure if it's something we're ready to discuss tonight, but if it is, then definitely those of you from the development team that are on tonight, please do in your presentations provide a little insight on that. I do want to keep in mind that the APF is financially responsible for their use and collaboration with the development team. And so ideally we need to ask as many of these questions ahead of the meeting so that we can ensure that the information is discussed in the preliminary meetings and thus addressed during the committee meetings. Okay, last little bit, and then I promise you guys when I hear so much from me. Park planning input, which I do know is on the agenda for this evening. Some of the suggestions being a dog park, trails. I know that some of you all made some suggestions at the last meeting. We are certainly looking to hear more. I think this is a great something to be investigated via some surveying and polling that can come out to each of you in between meetings. One of the suggestions is to leave the paths unpaved. I'd love to hear back from committee members on whether or not you wish to see paved paths, unpaved paths, so that we can start advising on, you know, what the majority of the committee would like to see there. I also see a mention of playground as an option. Just because of my role with the Conservancy for the Michelle Obama Park, I want to make mention that the development for the park that is going to be adjacent to this development includes the largest ADA playground in North Georgia and possibly the largest ADA playground in all of Georgia. So with that being just a stone's throw away, I don't want to mix the concept of a playground, but just be mindful that that something is already in the works, literally a short walk away. And if we get the connectivity piece going, then obviously a very easy access point. Connection to the South River Trail or Constitution Lakes would also be great. A work group separate from this body is already working on the connectivity pieces and working to bring together the various developers and property owners, county, city, individual business owners, et cetera, to investigate the connectivity options that exist. That is a long range plan, something that's going to take some time to put together, but I think now is the time to get all of those developers and parties in communication with each other. Markers for human and elephant graves, highlighting the library stones and acknowledging the prison farm's history, as well as the indigenous people who once lived there. Not sure if we're prepared to discuss this at tonight's meeting, but it is certainly noted so that it can be discussed in a future meeting. So development team, please add this to the long list of items before you. And then again, it's a revisitation of the keeping trails as natural as possible without paving and keeping as many trees and nature preserved. And also a concern that starting the destruction, which I believe is the build out in the spring, could be devastating to wildlife as that's when they're nesting. So this is a great addition for a survey to all committee members to get your thoughts and advice on that for the council. So do know that all of these topics are on the table. Thank you so much, Nicole, for your very thorough and thoughtful communication so that we can move forward in addressing all of these items. I hope I've satisfactorily addressed some of the items before us and how we're going to revisit them in upcoming meetings and potentially even this meeting. With that, Madam Secretary has also provided some feedback. And while a lot of that will be addressed in subsequent meetings, I just want to make a quick mention that Ms. Ponnet mentioned additional concern via email regarding the youth detention facility on Constitution Road and the impact on the detainees there. This item will receive further discussion as we move into the discussions on community impact and engagement, as well as the education collaboration, as we work towards a balance that is considerate of both those detainees as well as local schools that are impacted by this development. So with that, that is enough out of me. Madam Secretary has also proposed the formation of some work groups to address various aspects of the development. And while this is going to require some discussion before implementation, I'd like to ask Ms. Ponitz to provide a brief overview to be followed up with an email communication to all committee members on how we can implement such work groups. With that, Ms. Ponitz, let me toss to you.
Okay. Thanks. So yeah, I think a couple of us, including like myself and Sharon and Nicole and Amy, had talked about wanting to potentially focus in on some specifics to get groups of people working on items that we think will help bring our ideas together about the development of the whole property, and in a way that kind of prioritizes the schedule of the project and keeping in mind what people really want to do. So what we want to do as a first step is like an email brainstorming survey, and we'll send out a link like at this weekend or early next week to everybody with basically a digital whiteboard where you can paste sticky notes with ideas for these topics for further discussion. So we'll add the things that are already have been brought up in these meetings and are in the notes, and anything else you think of. And then moving forward, we'll do something to organize those ideas into working groups and then plan out when those working groups have deadlines and when we revisit if the work is still going well or we need to refocus on a different priority or whatnot. So just hoping that it'll help make the process pretty like more bite-sized as information comes out, especially as we get big reports to review. It'll be helpful for working groups to focus in on certain aspects and then discuss together and come back with recommendations or ideas or whatnot. So yeah, expect an email from us in the next couple days. And I think with that, I'll just turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Lily. All very helpful information and from both you and Nicole in helping us get and stay organized as we move through this. With that, let's move into tonight's presentations. We're going to start with an environmental update. So Mr. Alan Williams, will you take it away?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alan Williams for the Atlanta Police Foundation will give an environmental and cultural resource assessment and preservation update this evening. During the last previous meetings, we talked about the phase 1 environmental assessment, which has been performed, which did all the studies for the historical and also the site observations and came up with the recognized environmental conditions. With that, we moved into the phase 2 study, which is actually all the investigative portion of addressing all these RECs. That work has progressed nicely in the field, and so that field work has been completed. The borings consisted of, notes here of approximately 18 borings, which was a combination of soil and groundwater borings. We had talked previously about how we historically with experience have encountered dry wells, so we had a few more groundwater wells drilled. So at the end of the day, we came up with 18 borings, but only 3 groundwater sampling. But in the groundwater sampling that did come up dry, we used the additional soil samples in the lab. That work is complete. The lab work is complete and the report is available. And Marshall's going to talk about the publishing of that report there. So the good news is I'm going to, we've attached a statement from Terracon Consultant, who's our consultant that's did the, perform the phase 1 study and the phase 2 investigation. So I'm going to read this for the people that are not on the video. Dear Mr. Freeman, Terracon Consultants is pleased to submit our report of limited site investigation activities completed at the site referenced above. The report presents data from recent field activities that included the completion of soil borings and the collection of soil and groundwater samples for chemical analysis. The activities were completed to address the findings of the phase 1 environmental site assessment, Terracon project number 492174142, dated April 22nd, 2021. Terracon conducted the LSI in general accordance with our proposal P as in Paul 492174060, dated July 12th, 2021. Based on the LSI results, no constituents of concern were identified above the applicable regulatory thresholds. As such, no reporting is required to the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, and no additional environmental assessment is recommended at this time. Last paragraph is Terracon appreciates this opportunity to provide environmental engineering services to the Atlanta Police Foundation. Should you have any questions or require additional information, please not hesitate to call. So I think our process is working with the soil samples and the groundwater samples, and that should conclude the phase 2 study. Any questions?
Floor is open for questions. Please identify yourself before speaking should you have any questions.
Great. Moving to the cultural resource assessment. That work is ongoing. We previously discussed in meetings that the field work is complete. The report is being generated, and we should have that report in the next several weeks, hopefully by the end of the year. The question about the marble columns and stone elements, and also the big storage tank, we have identified the areas are 2 different areas, Homer and Poe, and other areas called Virgil, visited many times. We're in the process now of identifying those pieces, and we're putting a plan together that will work with David Mitchell over at the Atlanta Preservation Center to identify use and how we can incorporate that into the project. The other question was the big storage tank, and I'm assuming it's the big 70 or 100,000 gallons tank that's kind of behind the 3 buildings at the, I call it the first entrance down in the woods, where they've got a cutout and got a lot of artwork inside the tank. We're going to identify that as that is in our cultural assessment. We're going to go out with a surveying crew and identify the exact location of that tank. And hopefully it will work within the design of where the 3 existing buildings are, right there adjacent to Key Road. That storage tank is probably, I don't know how many yards it is down to the south. Hopefully we can incorporate that and not have to do anything with that tank. So that, and I guess to wrap it up, Madam Chair, the preservation, Atlanta Preservation Centers, we've discussed, David Mitchell, will take our cultural resource assessment report and help us identify what our needs are and what we can do, and will help us kind of complete our program. So that's my report for the night.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Very helpful and informative. Are there any questions? I'd like to go ahead and open the floor.
Madam Chair, if I could just add one quick thing on that.
You sure
Again,
can.
And regarding the phase 2, as Alan mentioned, again, following this meeting, just like last time, we will again get out to the committee as quickly as we can the slide deck following tonight's presentation, as well as the draft report that we have as well. So expect those 2 documents to come out to the committee soon.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Madam Chair, I have one last thing. It's not even anything to do with this project. I just noticed Carver High School is playing Cedar Grove High School for the state championship. So we got a City of Atlanta school playing at the DeKalb County School, and They look like they're 7.7 miles away from each other. So they
That's
probably
awesome. Yay.
got part of this committee pulling for Carver and part pulling for Cedar Grove.
I am pulling for Cedar Grove. That's my community.
I'm joining Pat. I always support Pat. So let's go Cedar Grove.
Thanks for that update with Mr. Williams.
You're welcome.
Thank you both for those tidbits of information and the update provided. Does anyone have any questions regarding the environmental update and the cultural preservation that was just provided?
This is Lily. I had just a clarification. When did you say that the culture and preservation survey report would be done?
By the end of the year.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions? Okay. With no additional questions on the environmental updates.
There's a question in the chat. I don't know.
Okay, let's see. It is from Laura P. It says, will the phase 2 ESA be made available to the public, or will it have to be obtained via an open records request as the phase 1 ESA was?
No, it will be posted on the atltrainingcenter.com website. And that'll be the site that, again, we will, again, have all living, breathing documents posted once they are available.
Perfect, thank you. And Nicole, thank you for pointing that out, as my eye is not to the chat during a majority of this presentation tonight, so I appreciate the help there. With that, let me move forward into the next piece of our agenda, which is the green space and park input. Mr. Bob Hughes.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and hello, everybody again. And really, I'd just like to kind of open this up to y'all. You know, we handed out, sent to everybody this to help you just sort of, you know, think about things that you think would be important in this park. And tonight, we just want to listen to y'all and understand what those are and see how we can we can take all of that into advisement as we look to plan portions of the park. So I don't know if there's if y'all want to go down a roll call, take turns, however we want to do it here, but let's somebody take it away and give us some thoughts.
Sure, I will simply ask that, again, everybody provide your input and allow others to have an opportunity to speak before revisiting. I do see that Miss Ann Phillips has her hand raised, so if you would like to start us off, Miss Phillips.
Okay. Thank you so much. Alan, Bob, I have a quick question for you about the natural landscape. Are there, to your knowledge, are there any salvageable caves and places that can be explored, that can be saved and explored? And the reason I'm asking is our Boy Scout and Girl Scouts troops, when they go to see what I call explorative situations, they always have to go out of the city of Atlanta. And I think that a location this size must have some spaces that can be reserved for Boy Scout, Girl Scout troops, and areas in there that can be explored. We may not have any caves or anything like that, but things that would be of significance to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, so that they have something close at home that they can go and rather than having to load them up and take them, you know, up into the mountains and stuff like that.
Right. So yeah, I'm not aware that there's anything like a cave here per se, but I think that there's a tremendous amount of educational potential on this site. One of the things that we talked about it when we were out there walking around, there's a tremendous amount of what are known as invasive species on the property, and what those do and don't do from an environmental standpoint, and how moving that landscape from that invasive landscape to a truly a natural native landscape And even if we got into it, the different plants grow on the north side of a slope than do a south side of a slope. Different plants grow in the floodplain than grow on top of the hills. And so we can begin to put together a palette of plant material and an educational program basis by which Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, local elementary schools, it can become more than just a park you walk through that is pretty. It is a park that has true environmental function for us as a community, and talk about how that is. So I think the educational possibilities here are very, very high.
Thank you for that, Bob. I see that Miss Amy Taylor has her hand raised as well.
Hi, can
Yeah.
you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I know I've been having really bad technical issues this evening, but I just wanted to clarify that I'm sorry, but back to the environmental testing. Is that now concluded? Is there no more testing going to be done?
That's correct.
Okay. So we can go back and look at the previous reports and revisit that if we have any issues.
Well, you're an environmental science person. The phase one, you're familiar with the phase one, is identifying the conditions. The phase two is actually going out and investigating, and we've done that, and with soil samples and groundwater samples. So those are the two reports that we use to say that they're below the threshold for the EPD, and also that nothing requires remediation.
Okay. And those areas where there was like soil staining and stuff like that, those were identified?
Yes. Yeah, that's where if you look at when you look at the phase two report, you've seen the phase one report that identified those areas. Those were in the previous maps that we had with the soil boring locations. That's where we went and identified that, and we advanced 18 borings, and out of those 18 borings, 3 were groundwater, and the rest of were soil samples. But they were in those areas that were identified with staining, such as at that the little barn area there, right there off the first area off Key Road there, that little storage shed. And also it's there to take a look at, Amy.
Okay. Now, last time we talked about the audio testing, also the audio assessment, has that been concluded, and do we have results from that also?
It has not been done yet. That's for the gun range, firing range, right?
All right.
No, that has not been done. I mean, the architect's actually handling that. That's just that what his presentation was the last meeting was just kind of to show what we're going to do. And that's still in progress.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
It's not interrupting. That's what you're here for.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, Allison.
Tell us something about the park that you'd like to say.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, I just want the community to be happy with the outcome. I think our community in particular has spoken in what we put out to Allison yesterday, Nicole and I. They want to see areas where they can be safe and enjoy nature. And I love all the native species you're talking about. And I totally agree with you that there's educational opportunities there. Like we talked about at the site, there's an educational opportunity to learn about prescribed burning. And this property, I believe it's a really good candidate for prescribed burning, and it's a much better and less expensive option than using the chemicals, which take so much more time, much more money, and it's more environmentally harmful to use the chemicals. So I would love to see that property get some fire on it.
And also, I think for me, I would like to see some educational tours in reference to the park and the park history, given by maybe the police, some of the police department or the foundation department members. And Mrs. Phillips, I really like her idea. I was Boy Scout chairperson for a lot of years when my sons were involved in the scouting program. And maybe that can be incorporated too, where the scouts can take tours periodically through the park to educate them about what's in the park, about the police in terms of what they do in terms of fire and those types of situations. So maybe some of that can be incorporated into the history of the park as well.
And one thing I'll volunteer our team to do, H2R, as we move forward in this, I'd love to sit down with the local scout troops and have a conversation like this and take them out there now and talk about what's an invasive species, what's a natural species, the different things. And as we develop plans, let's just build an educational program and involving the scouts and along that process as well. I'd love to do that.
I would love to see
would be
that.
wonderful.
Yeah, both of my sons became Eagle Scouts under the scouting program, and we learned a lot in those areas when we were camping and touring different locations in different parks. So I would love to see that come together.
Yeah, I think we can do something really fun there.
And maybe, Bob, even having some area for camping. I mean, I was a scout. I mean,
great.
Why not stay there? I mean, we were right in the neighborhood. You could do that. You could create a campground in that site.
Yeah, sounds great.
I just heard you, Ms. Tori. Was that you?
Yeah.
Yes,
Tori,
that's
yes.
correct.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I got the voices correct there. I do see that Ms. Sharon Williams has had her hand up, so I'd like to give her an opportunity to take the floor as well.
Thank you. So I'm also just tracking what everyone else is saying as well, because I think it'd be nice for us to have like a feature board. And again, to maybe vote on the features that we like to help prioritize. I think a lot of us are on the same page. So I also just want to echo the importance of the native species and keeping the landscape as natural as possible, but also having amenities like bathrooms and lighting where appropriate, and also as green as possible. If we can use solar energy, if it's appropriate for that location, to not pave, but have well-maintained trails. Taking into consideration other projects, maybe we do this through the committee structure, but I like the way, Madam Chair, it talked about some of the other parks and things like that, initiatives that are going on in the community, so that this one project doesn't have to do everything, that there's things that may be addressed in other projects, that somehow, maybe again through the committee structure, that we access that. That I do like the idea. I know we talked about the scouts, but even the schools to learn about nature, that there is an environmental education function, and that maybe that there's posts or learning spots that are put up to describe what people are looking at. And that it be dog friendly or have areas or pet friendly trails, and that there's trash receptacles or some kind of waste removal program that would help people with their animals to make sure that that's, again, eco-friendly and pet-friendly.
Thank you very much for that, Sharon. A much appreciated input. I will make a quick note that the polling that I would like to get out to committee members will allow us to gauge interest on some of the very items that you put out there. And then also, I know tonight's agenda is a little bit shorter than originally planned because we were also going to address some items relative to the engagement of local schools, but we're still building out some of that portion for future discussion. And so I think during our next meeting, we will really be able to engage where we stand with schools. And I think that the idea of incorporating the Eagle Scouts into that as well, so that these types of events can take place where they can start learning during this process, as suggested by Bob. That's an absolutely amazing opportunity. Are there any additional questions or commentary in terms of what you all would like to see in the green space and park?
Yeah, I think Amy has her hand up.
Before I go back to Amy, again, I just want to make sure that each committee member has an opportunity to speak first. So hang tight for me, Amy. I do see Ms. Hollis Turner, your hand, it was up. Did you have a query?
Yes, I did.
Okay, the floor is yours.
It may have been already discussed, but when we were talking about access, I just missed it about the handicap or wheelchair accessible when we were talking about paving the paths and whatnot. Did we already discuss that?
We have not.
So, I'll jump in and just sort of add some, words around that. The dirt paths, and particularly given the grade that we might be dealing with out here at times, would not qualify as ADA accessible. So it may be, which doesn't mean that you can't have those kind of paths in a park, but generally speaking, you would look to have accommodations so that if somebody is impaired and wants to enjoy nature, they have a way to get there. Or if there's, and converse to that is a mother with a stroller or family with a stroller, and want to get out in nature, they have a way to do that. So I would, if I were advising or having a voice here about this, I would say that we should look to create a balance of those two things. It doesn't mean we have to pave everything. There can be true nature trails, but if it's intended for all people at multiple levels to be able to use the park, then we would need to understand what that is and provide for it.
Thank you very much for that feedback. I also see that Ms. Jacqueline Rainey has her hand raised. I see that you're speaking and that you are unmuted, but it looks like the connection is not great, and now it's showing as muted again. Are you able to unmute and try again?
Okay.
You're muted again.
Type it. Put it in the chat.
Can you hear
I can hear you.
me?
Okay, it looks like the connection may be a challenge because you're not coming through. I can see your mouth moving, but unfortunately cannot hear you. If you're able to submit your question in the chat so that we can get an answer for you.
Can you hear me?
I can right now, yes.
No, we can't.
Okay, yeah. Looks like it's gone back out. So Ms. Rainey, if you would submit your question via the chat, or as always, you're welcome to email me and I will forward it along to the development team so that we can get you an adequate answer to any question you may have. I see that Ms. Amy Taylor as well as Ms. Sharon Williams have their hands up. Before I move back to either one of them, are there any committee members who have not had an opportunity to speak who have a question or input regarding the park items you would like to see in the park or green space? Okay. I'm sorry, was that a query?
Okay.
Okay. Miss Amy Taylor, let's move back over to you.
Are you speaking to me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I wanted to maybe piggyback on the idea of tying in the scouts and things like that, children's clubs. My daughter for years was in with 4-H and she was on the archery team. So maybe something like, a type of clearing or field that can be used for archery or, those types of long range activities that a lot of kids groups often get into. I would love to see an archery range of some sort, because that was always a big challenge when she was involved with that. And I'm sure she would still love to go down there and shoot some arrows sometime, So that's my 2 cents.
Fair enough. Thank you for adding that to the list of possibilities to be considered. Ms. Sharon Williams, I see your hand is also up.
Yeah, I just, all I could think of was liability on that one with the archery, but but anyway, I'm fascinated by the ADA accessibility because I do think that's important. And is there a way, or could we get a recommendation on how to do that in a way that doesn't have to look like tar? Is there some kind of ADA accessible surface that's a little bit more green?
Yeah, that's a good one because the two that you see used the most are concrete and asphalt, and neither of those are greener materials right now. Let's just put that down and let's do some research around that.
Thank you.
And I'll also make mention, to the degree that we are looking at connectivity to the existing trail network, we need to give consideration for that as well, because those are paved trails. So at that point, people have come along on bicycles or even accessible devices, strollers, et cetera. And so we need to, in terms of being able to allow for connectivity, give consideration to how that can work together. With that, I do see that Ms. Shirley Nichols, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I didn't know it was up, but I just wanted it didn't show on my computer because
well, you're here
sharing.
now.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make a comment that I was really happy to hear you say that Michelle Obama Park that's being built will have a large area playground for the kids, because I'd like to see this particular park that we're working on develop the educational prospects and have the kids maybe focus over in that new park. I'm a little leery about thinking about little children over in that park playing on playground equipment. And I think that it would be better suited for them if they over in the park that was really designated for them for playground. And I wouldn't want to see any little kids out there sneak out there by themselves, get lost in the woods. So I just think that's something we need to consider too, to just make sure that we make that differentiation.
Thank you very much. I think that's all very helpful. And I think also as we continue to move through this, we can talk a little bit more about what all the amenities are in the park and how they can relate back to the park planning for this space as well. Yeah. That way we don't have a duplication of effort, but we do have the connectivity to those items.
I think that makes sense. Allison, you said you were on the conservancy associated with that park?
Correct.
With the Michelle Obama Park. Do you have a copy of the plans of the park, or could you help us get in touch with somebody where we could get a copy of those plans?
Absolutely. I actually had a meeting with the Cab Parks and Rec this week, as well as some discussion regarding the development team. And our hope is to link your team with their team so that those discussions can take place and looking into how that connectivity piece can come into play. So as an aside from this meeting, I will send all of that information over to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, in the interest of moving us forward with tonight's presentation, I would like to toss back to you, Mr. Hughes, for an update on the master plan review.
Sure. I think we click on to, which is pretty quick to get through this. This is the site plan that we reviewed as of November 9th, I guess. And it shows the southern entryway here, but it almost reads like there's a road all the way through the site from Key Road down to Constitution. And then we continue to show the orientation of this kind of come up in a rival thing with buildings A, B, and the drill field and stuff. But after we went on the site, it will click ahead to the next plan. And with some of the comments that we've had, you can see now this driveway comes through and really terminates itself into the parking lots. And then the drive from here that goes up to the barn is way lesser. And our connection for getting into the stables and barn sort of tees into that. So we're taking away any suggestion.
Sorry to interrupt, Bob. We're not able to see what you're referencing.
Oh,
I think it's
you're
zoomed in a
right.
little too tight.
Well, I'm moving my mouse like I'm in control and I'm not. That's the problem.
I'm gonna.
I can see what I was looking at.
The perils of technology, the perils
Right,
of technology.
right.
And just
Yeah.
real quick, Bob, as you're going through it, I did see that Jacqueline submitted a question in the chat, and I just want to make sure that that comes to you. She asked whether or not there's any consideration for floral bushes or trees that grow in this area to add color throughout the park area. So I would like to throw that onto your plate as we move through this.
And I'm going to answer that with an absolute. You'll see as we move forward in this, we have a whole catalog of native plant material and what you plant them for, what their fall color is, what they're this, and we can really do a lot of interesting things. We have them broken down by edible plants, medicinal quality plants. So there's a lot of things that we can do with our natural and native plant material in this environment that really is amazing. And so as we move forward, I can't wait to share some of that with you.
And just one more question that was in the chat from.
If you could just
To-
identify yourself, I think that's Lily, is it?
This
you?
is Lily, yeah, but
Okay, go ahead.
Tori Tucker put a question in the chat, which was, will there be any water features in the park?
We haven't really gotten that far along, I guess, but to think in our mind that there would be. There's of course the ponds that are there, water features. Whether you're, and I'm not sure what if somebody's asking what kind of water feature, I need to know a little bit more about what somebody's saying there. It's not that we couldn't, it's they're expensive and they're expensive to maintain. If you're talking about something that you're interacting with, playing with, etc. So we would have to know there's a good maintenance budget, or you would have a water feature that isn't much of a water feature.
Perfect. Thank you. And
Yeah, thanks.
Tori, as you know, there will be at least a splash pad over at the Michelle Obama Park. I know it's not a true water feature, but it's a water feature for kids and those of us who are kids at heart. So that will at least be one benefit in the area. All right, Mr. Hughes, was that the full update on the master plan review?
Yeah, well, just and Bree, do you have a cursor that you can move around if I talk a little bit? Yeah, there we go. Okay. Perfect. And you can see we've actually flipped buildings A and B, sort of spun the orientation of that now, so that the A, which would be the Leadership Institute, and what on the B, the classroom, really are addressing that southern approach and southern entry that we now have. And then one idea that we had, and we just put it here, of course we have what we call the drill field that we see graduation and other events occurring at. At the head of that, there might be a pavilion, and that pavilion could dual as a park pavilion and focus on that lake. And then, the few times a year there's graduation or some other event like that, it could, it could become a stage for that graduation. So it gets really beginning to get this notion that we're really inviting the community to be in this campus, that we're really looking at dual use. And if you look at what we have as that kind of drill field right now, it's a pretty good sized field. And there's no reason that on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, the community can't use that field for throwing Frisbee, playing touch football, whatever it is that we want to do. So let's think about how we get dual uses. And then the other thing that we've done is, you see where we had the long pasture before, we've broken that into two pieces. And that's where we're suggesting you see the connection all the way over to Michelle Obama Park. Now, whether that's the actual configuration of that pathway or not is yet to be seen. But from a just getting things on the plan standpoint that we've talked about, we want to begin to do that as this evolves. So those are the updates really to the master plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Are there any committee members that have any questions or comments based on the information provided? I do see. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut myself out there. I see your hand raised, Ms. Taylor. Would you like to take the floor?
Great. Oh, Bob, I've been looking at the map over the last couple weeks, and I can't remember if we talked about this last time or not, but can you explain what the two skid pads will be used for, the N and O?
So yeah, N it's really a driving skills. That's learning to back up a fire truck, turn it around, things that take a lot of room and in that area. And then the skid pad itself is truly what that is. You go down, the waters on it, and you learn to control a car on a wet road in skid. So,
Okay.
and I'd probably, and I'm going to stop right there and say to Marshall or Chief Shearbaum, I'm sure there are other things I'm leaving out in that description, and I don't want to be shortchange Amy's question there. So if y'all have anything to add, that'd be great.
Yeah, this is Darren. You were spot on. It's used for two purposes. The state's prescribed cone course for the proper handling of a police vehicle in our case, and the fire department would have their own. And then as well as cone courses that we develop just for safe driving in an urban environment. And then the skid pad is where it's a wet surface, and the vehicle is put into it is spun out, and the officer will train to bring that back in line of a prescribed area. That's to be able to practice regaining control if you lose control in an icy or a wet environment.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that. Miss Ophelia Lee, I see your hand raised as well.
When we were out there, I saw some deers running from one side to another. What's going to happen to the wildlife that is already there? Are we going to reserve a park for them, or?
Yeah, I think, there'd be about, I think as we calculate all this, 240 acres will remain, parkland. If we do move forward and start to restore that back to a native landscape versus the invasive landscape, it becomes a pretty nice component for a wildlife corridor. And I think then, as everybody has talked about, some of this connectivity along Entrenchment Creek down to the South River can begin to expand that corridor. So, I think what we do here maybe is really we're implementing phase one of a bigger idea.
Thank you very much for that, Bob. Are there any additional questions? I don't see any hands raised, but I want to leave the floor open in the event that there are.
I guess this is Lily Ponitz. Another thing, maybe a question related to what Ophelia mentioned was, does the noise assessment take into account wildlife impacts with the changes in the operations and the noise and the lighting kind of stuff?
Yes, it can. And we'll be using cutoff lighting so we don't have light pollution. That's sort of a standard today. I don't know anybody that doesn't do that. And then in terms of noise, if we've got enough noise coming out of anything here that it's affecting wildlife, I think it's going to be affecting humans as well, and we don't want either of those. So it's another reason that has continued to move itself westward and away from any part of the park that would have wildlife in it and any of the neighborhoods.
Okay, that's fair. I think that maybe just a point of input from me would be to say that it's a mischaracterization to say that you're improving wildlife corridors here when the forest already provides wildlife corridors. And so, I mean, remediation of the site for sure would improve it, but you're still turning forested land into paved land, which is going to fragment the existing wildlife corridors. So that's why, you know, wildlife, it's actually
I think we would both agree on both of those points.
okay.
That by in fact that we're taking some of this and putting it to a different use is impacting the amount of land that is available. And secondly, by improving the remaining 240 acres, we are actually doing good. So hopefully they even out in some way. I don't know, but I think I'm not disagreeing with your statement.
Thank you both for your input on that. I see Ms. Hollis Turner's hand is raised. You may take the floor.
Thank you. I understand about the deer and probably some mice and snakes and birds. What other kind of wildlife would we be considering that's over there now?
You know, I would imagine that you've got possums and raccoons over there. There may even be coyote over there, you know, given where we are. And that's something we would, you know, like to begin to talk about how we don't have, right, in the area. And so I myself am not a wildlife expert, so I'm out there, but, you know, having grown up here, lived next to wooded areas before, I think you're seeing everything that's possums, raccoons, rabbits, anything in that world, squirrels, you know, a wild array of birds, although I think we can increase the bird population by some of the things that we're doing with the native species here, because we provide real food there. Deer will definitely find this. I don't live far. We did the master plan for Atlanta Memorial Park, where it's Bobby Jones Golf Course, and there are deer on the Bobby Jones Golf Course, and you know that urbanized an area. There's certainly all sorts of birds, including hawks and falcons that are regularly in that area. So I think we would have all of that in here. In terms of the only type, other than the deer, will you know, the possums and raccoons will come to your trash can, and the deer will eat your flowers, right?
A couple more people had some input on some maybe pause. I think Nicole definitely had some input.
Well, before we jump through, I want to keep in line with the hands raised in order. I think that the next hand raised is Mr. Tory Tucker.
Yeah, just real quick on the facility, the current facility for the public safety. Is there plans to keep that open after you build this structure, or is that completely going to be closed and moved away from our community? Or will they be still using that, is what I'm asking, that land in that facility?
I think if I understand it, Marshall, Chief Sherbaum, you're talking about the field where the SWAT team does explosives, and then there's also a firing range that are out on the property. Those will no longer be used, and the explosives are moved to a completely different location, and the firing range is shut down in favor of the new firing range that's being built here, where we were talking about doing the noise studies. So all of that will move away from those neighborhoods.
Thank you for that. I see that Ms. Murato has her hand raised as well.
Hey, and yeah, I think I was just gonna kind of chime in as far as like the wildlife and stuff, and I was just gonna mention beavers. I know there's some of that around the water, the ponds, and then thinking too about the Constitution Lakes Park and kind of realizing how close that is also to industrial, and it has really, you know, a lot of wildlife and stuff. So I see sort of these plans kind of allowing in accommodating a lot of that wildlife.
Thank you for that, Nicole. I see Miss Amy Taylor, your hand is raised.
Hi, yeah, I wanted to revisit a discussion about the existing buildings. I know that you guys don't really have plans for them right now because they're not really safe structures to develop. But in my mind, leaving them there just sitting there is going to invite some unwanted activity. You know, I'm theorizing, of course, but so I just feel like we can maybe kick around an idea about what to do with those existing buildings other than just leave them there to let unwanted activity develop. Because
Chair, I
I
can
think
answer that.
it will. Yeah, we talked about it when we were on the site, but
And I think one thing that would be helpful there, Amy, if we can add that to our polling so that we can get back responses from the committee members and learn some of the things that perhaps you all would like to see happen with those buildings. And then of course, get the development team and the APF's input on implementing some of those. I also see Mr. Alan Williams' hand is up, which makes me think he may have a response for us. Mr. Williams?
Amy, I guess that was your question. We got a process that's working right now, and that cultural resource assessment will identify those structures. And then we can go in and take a look at them, not only structurally, but also how to safe them up and also secure them, but also make them where you can actually walk by and take a look at them. And
okay.
I guess enjoy the history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any part of the tour.
I see Ms. Ophelia Lee. I'm going to circle back to you, Ms. Turner and Ms. Ponnet, as soon as we have an opportunity to run through those who have not yet had an opportunity to speak on the matter. So I would like to give the floor to Ms. Lee.
Now, it's been said that, Mr. Hughes, you were saying that the firing range and all the loud exploding training will not be at this center? Is it going to be at this center?
There will be a firing range at this center, but the explosives that are going on now in the field down there will not be on this property anywhere in the future.
Just as a point of clarification, Ms. Lee, I think where you may have heard that the range is going away, the existing range will be moving over to the new site. Right now, it is currently about 500 feet away from the Boulder Walk subdivision, and in the new plan that you see before you, it is moving about a half mile away from our subdivision and over towards Old Constitution Road, if that helps provide some clarity on the reference to that item moving away.
Well, yeah, I know, because I'm concerned about the noise level, because I live in Thomasville, and right at Moreland Avenue, we do have a noise wall, but I don't know if that wall is going to contain a lot of this, because we're right there at it. So I want to make sure my residents is not going to wake up one day and want to know what's going on. So that's why I'm worried about that volume. Do my wall need to be higher? How do I protect my residents here? Because the wall was there for Moreland Avenue when the traffic got heavy and the noise and the traffic. But if we come back and we start doing a lot of firing and we're here, I don't know how much it's going to affect my residents at that wall. So that's why I'm asking. I'm trying to make sure now that my residents are going to be okay.
So that is Ms. Lee, that is the sound study that we've talked about before, which we haven't completed yet. It will get done. And and so that will tell us what we need to do to keep that noise contained on this site. So, once we have that information, I think we'll be able to address this and address, your neighborhood specific concerns, but we just don't have that information at this point. But that is definitely on the list. Write it down in capital letters.
Okay. Okay.
Definitely. This is something that will be revisited at an upcoming meeting once we have that noise analysis complete. Before I move on, I'm sorry. For those who have already asked questions, is there anyone else that has not had an opportunity to take the floor that has a question on the update or the master plan review? Okay, with that, Ms. Ponitz, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So I put in a chat a link to an article that has some information about other ecological habitats that are out there on site. It's important to think about the water that's there and the amphibians, and turtles, things like that are living out there now. And could serve educational purposes for sure. And then I just had a question. It's not related to the noise study, but it's just like clarification again on the firing range. So like, could we point to where on the map the current firing range is, just so it's, and then maybe where the new one is, so it's clear?
The current one is up to the top. It's, isn't it? I'm not sure it's even.
It's a
on
little
the
further
map.
to the right of where you are. If you go over to where V is and then you move right just a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit further right, but it's in that area there.
Yeah.
And then the new, of course, is right.
Okay.
Just one point of clarity. That area there that you just pointed to by V, that's where the current explosives is, if I'm correct. And Chief Shearbaum can also jump in here. But across the road there, and I believe it's actually a little map, is where you get to the actual range itself.
Yeah, I think it's just that you can
It's on
see a
both
bit of
sides.
the sewer treatment plant, and isn't it just to the right of the sewer treatment plant up in there?
That is correct. From what I can see on my screen, the current range is just off of this photograph.
Yeah, that's what I was
Just
thinking.
past
right
the
up in
sewage
there.
treatment plant.
Thank you for that
Okay.
clarity.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Miss Amy Taylor, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to take the floor?
Hey, yeah, back to the firing range. Did we ever get like a decisive answer on whether that's going to be an enclosed firing range or if it's technically an outdoor firing range, or what is that firing range? Is it, is it enclosed, indoor, or is it exposed?
You want me to answer that one, Bob?
Yeah,
This is
Tony,
Tony
would.
Kinney from LS3P, an architect on the project. Thanks for your question, Amy. So the range is considered outdoor, but it does have a cap on it. It has a baffled top on top of it. So it'll be enclosed on 4 sides with concrete walls. And the current plan is to have concrete baffles on the top as well. Now, so those are slanted pieces that go from wall to wall across the entire range. They are open air, so they do allow air in. They're more for security than they are for sound. But we're orienting the range in such a way that the shooting line, the place where people are firing most from, will be in a direction so that the sound that's coming out of the range, if any, we are going to do that acoustic study, will be going in a direction will not be going into the neighborhoods or the trails or the detention center. So that's our goal. I mean, again, like Ms. Clark said, this is very early on in the process. We have technically not even engaged the consultant yet. They've only just given us preliminary information on the type of work they do, but they have a lot of study to do for this particular site eventually. But consider that the building, it's not enclosed, but it is covered partially, and it does have open air in places. We'll have more information for that as we go along, but I wanted to provide a little more clarity from it. Maybe at a time we could give you some, maybe a sketch or a picture of one, so you can kind of have a better idea of how that looks. We can certainly provide that in a future presentation.
Is there any reason that we couldn't make it in an enclosed structure?
That's a programming issue for APD, so they would have to run that discussion further.
Yeah, 'cause I
can
mean,
touch
I
on that one too, Tony. I would just again add to that again, the goal is for it not to be completely enclosed. However, what we are again relying on is that the acoustic study and the firm that we have engaged, they are experts in the idea of mitigating noise from facilities such as firing ranges. And so our goal is to allow them to do their research, provide us back their actual study and their report, and then they will again give recommendations for how we reduce any noise level that again would potentially come from the range.
Just a quick point of clarification. Do we have an idea on how soon we would have the noise analysis complete so that we have an idea of when we can revisit these topics?
We do not have a completion date as of yet. We have, we're just in the early stages of discussion about getting them contractually working on the project.
That sounds good. And in that event, I will ask that everybody please hold on to your questions on this piece. Do not lose them. Make a note, forward them along if you need to, so that we can make sure that as this study does come in and is available to us, that we can ask the appropriate questions and give direction on this piece.
And I'm sure
with
once,
that,
once we
oh,
get
sorry.
them under contract, we can then give you a general anticipated date of when their study would be, conducted and complete. So
That would be very helpful. In the interest of time and making sure that we do not run over this evening, I would just like to see if there are any additional discussion points that are imperative that we cover tonight before I make a couple of quick announcements for the committee.
Allison.
Who's speaking?
Ann Phillips.
Oh, hi, Ann. Go
Hey.
ahead.
Maybe not tonight, but at one of our next meetings, we need to do some administrative housekeeping. I'm going back to that request from AJC in terms of one of the questions that she asked you about exactly what is our role as the stakeholder advisory committee. And I don't think that we've gotten to a point where we've put that in writing, and everybody should be on the same page with stuff like that. So we have a little bit of administrative housekeeping we might need to do.
Fair enough. I will say that the role of this committee is determined by the legislation that was provided. So I will forward that along to all committee members, as well as my remarks at the start of last meeting, which went over quite a bit of the purview of what this committee is intended to advise on. And so that might help provide some clarity, but I'll provide that information, and then at a subsequent meeting, perhaps the very next meeting, if there are questions about that or any items where it is still vague as to where we are and where we are headed, we'll be sure to make sure that we address those up front at the meeting before moving into any other topics. With that, I don't know if there are any other input or thoughts at this juncture. I will go silent for just a moment so I can listen and see if there's anyone that has another item of input.
This is Lily, and I was just gonna say, I was kind of thinking that, to Ann's point, that a working committee could focus on getting that mission written at least as much as we have control to do. So.
Fair enough.
We
I'm
can
not
work on that.
opposed. I think it is very clearly, or in my opinion, fairly clearly established by the legislation. So I'm not sure how far down the rabbit hole we will go, but I think it's at least worth exploring to the degree that we need to provide any more structure to the committee. With that, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your input, for your thoughts, for your questions. I think this meeting has been a true success, and that we've heard from very, members of the community that we don't always get an opportunity to hear from, and the amount of input tonight, I think will be very helpful in the build out of this project. So with that, one thing that we do not yet have on the table is our meeting dates going into Q1. As of today, we have no meetings on the book, so we want to make sure that we go ahead and take care of that tonight. In keeping with the second Tuesday scenario that we have been working with, the proposed meeting dates, at least for Q1, would be January the 11th and then February the 8th. Are there any objections to keeping with this current schedule and putting our next meetings on those dates? Oh, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned to you, January the 11th, February the 8th, and March the 8th.
This
with-
is
with-
Turner
oh,
from
I'm sorry.
Norwood Manor. I'm sorry, this is
Yes.
Hollis from Norwood Manor. Our normal regular scheduled city league meeting is the second Tuesday of each month at 6 from 6 to 7:30. So that's a direct conflict for me. And that's just one out of many, but it is a direct conflict for me.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I will make sure that is noted. Is there anyone else for whom that would be a conflict?
So how about the Wednesday instead of Tuesday?
Wednesdays
did-
are bad for Nicole Morado. Just gonna throw that out there.
Is it good for you, Nicole?
No, Wednesdays are not. Are
Oh, it's
awful.
not good. Okay.
I have a meeting every Wednesday.
Our current structure has us working on the second Tuesday as it stands, not to pull anyone away from what they have going. If the majority is able to continue with the second Tuesday, we will keep that going. If not, then we're going to send out some additional dates as options for the committee.
So it sounds like
just
just
wanna-
one person has a conflict. That's all.
Right.
Okay.
I agree. I just want to leave the floor open for a quick minute to see if anyone else has a conflict on the Tuesday option before we move forward. Okay. With that, with no additional response on that, what I will ask is that you all leave your calendars open for the same time slot, 6 to 7 Thursday. Oh, if I could get it out, from 6 to 7:30 on the second Tuesday in January, February, and March. That is January the 11th, February the 8th, and March the 8th. To the degree that we can, Ms. Hollis, if there's an opportunity to accommodate, we most certainly will. If we need to make some adjustment, we'll try to figure out how we can make this work for all parties involved. That being said, it looks like we have covered all points of our agenda this evening. The working groups discussion will be taking place, I believe, this Friday. Lily, Nicole, and Sharon will all be participating on that call, if I'm not mistaken, or at least Lily, Sharon, and I for sure are on that conversation. And so please stand by for some additional information to come out from us as well. We will also be working to get some polling information out to you ahead of the next meeting so that we can make sure that we are moving forward in a way that makes sense. With that, I will go ahead and call this meeting adjourned here at 7:24 p.m. And I look forward to seeing you all in January. Have a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all.
All right, same here.
Back to
Thank you.
everybody.
Christmas all.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.